Welcome to episode 28 of the Goldenberg Destiny Project. So the last few episodes we've been talking a lot about the idea of a Jewish king and about what was going on during the period of the judges and how Saul fit into the picture and how eventually David would fit into the picture. We're talking about that. And I tried to make myself pretty clear, but I got an email from one of my correspondents. His name is Moshe Cohen. I just want to read you the email. If I understand correctly, you suggest that a king in the Torah scheme is a leader and teacher, not a monarch, and this takes away problems associated with monarchy. How does this square with the powers granted to a king to levy taxes and so on, and the fact that the king bequeaths his kingship to his son? Doesn't this specifically open the door to the abuses of monarchy? How can it be guaranteed that the king stays within his mandate of leading and inspiring the nation if he is given powers of absolute dominion? Excellent questions. I have a good friend, Rabbi Reinman, who was a big Talmud Chacham, and he has a very popular podcast. And people send in questions, and he responds to them. So he called me up a while ago that he said he's dealing with the question of why do Hasidim give more cover to the Rebbe than they do to the Rosh Yeshiva. And I told him because the Rebbe is a king. And the conversation was very short. And I heard that later he quoted me on his website that the Rebbe is a king, and he was not comfortable with the idea. He says, who anointed him? So I really would like to explain this at great length, reasonable length. So before we were talking about what was going on by the Shoftim and the kings, and I brought in the idea of a Rebbe, a Hasidic Rebbe, as a mashal, and I did not give that too much attention. I think today I want to do it from the other side. I want to start with the Hasidic community, and I want to look at it not from an ideological perspective, but from a sociological perspective. I want to talk about the organization and the formation of these communities. So let's assume now we have a Rebbe. I'm not nobody specific. You have a Rebbe who is a fairly big Rebbe, and he has 10,000 people in his 10,000 families in his community. The community is organized on an ideology. All the people in this community, they subscribe to the Hasidic ideology, to the Derech of the Baal Shem Tov, and they also subscribe to the particular flavor of Hasidus, which is in this particular Hasidus, and they all, of course, all Hasidus are different. Some emphasize this, some emphasize that. They have different styles, different manners. So they all subscribe to this type of Hasidus, and they organize themselves, and now they are ideological. They're a community of people that share one ideology. Now, that is the organizing principle of this community. Let's say, besides the Hasidic part, you have to keep the Torah and do mitzvahs, and you have on top of that a layer of a particular Hasidic ideology. Now, let's say they all live together in one town, like Square or Monroe or other places, not familiar with all of them. And they are a Hasidic community. Now, if somebody was to decide that he doesn't want to be a Chassid anymore, he wants to be a Misnagid, then he's not part of that community. He has no place in that community. If he decides that he wants to drive on Shabbos, or he wants to eat non-kosher food, then he's not part of that community. He has no place there. He has to leave. He's not part of that community. Now, of course, you can never know what people do behind closed doors. Let's be real. maybe people in that community, some of them do things they shouldn't do behind closed doors. But at least in the public arena, they're not going to do anything which is different from the norms of that society. Because if they do, then they're not part of that society. So that is the basis of a Hasidic community. The Rebbe's job, now this community, who are all organized together with one idea and one goal and one ideology, the institutions of this community arise organically. Nobody has to impose an institution on it. The people of this community need chinuch for their children. So somebody gets up and he makes a yeshiva, somebody gets up and makes a Beis Yaakov, somebody makes a kollel, and the people, it happens by itself. And this is what people need. And it grows up from the bottom up, the institutions arise. The role of the Rebbe in this community is not to go out and build institutions, and certainly not to run around on Shabbos and see who's smoking and who's driving and check if anybody went to a non-kosher restaurant. That's not his job. The institutions grow up on their own. They have people that run them, and those people are loyal to the Rebbe, and they're going to come to the Rebbe. They have a question, they need advice, they run into a problem, they'll come to the Rebbe and ask him his advice. But the role of the Rebbe is not to manage the institutions of that community. There is nobody who is the governor of that community who manages it. Nobody. They all manage themselves. You want to have a chesed organization, so some people step forward and they're going to make a Tomchei Shabbos organization or a Hatzalah, and it comes from the bottom. It comes from the people, and all these institutions arise. And there's nobody who is the executive, the chief executive of all the institutions. It doesn't exist. They all are independent, coming from the bottom, and they don't need to be regulated. So the Rebbe's job is to be Oved Hashem, to say Torah if he wants to daven, to lead the Tishan, whatever he does that in his ideology will elevate the spiritual condition of all his Hasidim. That is the Rebbe's job, to give brachas, to give people chizuk. This is what the Rebbe's job is. He does not have to be involved in any of the institutions of the society because they're all self-sustaining. They're all existing independently. He doesn't have to be involved with that. So that is why the Rebbe can do his job, which is to be the spiritual leader. And of course, he has authority. He must have total authority. If anybody does something which is against what he believes should be done, he has the ability to tell people to leave. He has that power over the entire Hasidus, but it's not his job to exercise that power. That power is used if it's needed, but that is not the functions of his role. It's not his role. Now, if a Rebbe is imagine the Hasidus, the community, organized itself around a Rebbe who is a great person, then this person is now the leader of this community, and he's not corrupted or he doesn't have to get his hands dirty. He doesn't have to be involved in anything. I mean, maybe if they want to raise money, they'll bring the Rebbe as just to show him, but he's not the fundraiser. He doesn't do any of these things. He is, separate and pure, and that is his job. Now, if he is such a person, and then he has children, and the children grow up in his home, and his home is totally devoted to Torah and Yerushalayim and Avodah, and that is how they grow up, then hopefully one of them will be able to be worthy of replacing him. When he dies, when he passes on, then one of his sons who's been groomed to be the Rebbe and has been brought up from childhood to be completely immersed in Torah, not running around and doing other things, not doing business. He's not managing the institutions. He doesn't come in to see how the schools are doing. And I mean, he might come sometime as a visit to inspire the students, but he's not busy with this. He's not. So then the son will be brought up in the same way, and he has all the community relying on him. Then he will likely do a very good job, and then his son is the same thing. Now some of them will be bigger, some smaller, but in general, when you have a larger bistva and one Rebbe follows the other Rebbe, they're all good people. You will rarely find, I don't think, maybe never, you'll never find a Hasidic dynasty where a Rebbe who replaces his father, replaces him, is a corrupt person. You may not like him, maybe he's too sharp sometimes with other people, maybe. But these are small things. Essentially, such a person, his life is devoted to Torah and Avodah, and he is a good person. Maybe somebody sometimes will be better than his father, sometimes he won't be as good as his father, but this will be a stable dynasty. And the Hasidic dynasties are stable. They are stable. What he was asking, that if it bequeaths his kingship, that they are stable because they're organized in exactly the right way. The community is self-organizing, self-sustaining. The Rebbe does not, and there is nobody who's in charge of this. There is no governor of a Hasidic community. The Rebbe is in the world of spirituality. That's how they are, and it functions. It works, but it's on a small scale. You have 10,000 Hasidim, you have 100,000 Hasidim. It's still a small scale. The idea of the Tkufas HaShoftim and the Melech was to bring in a Melech whose job would be, he'd be Mashiach. His job would be to bring the people to the highest levels of Torah and Avodah. That would be his job. In order to do this, the nation, not the community, the nation has to be organically organized in the same way. The nation has to be built around the central idea that the three that we spoke back in episode 3, the three ideas that the Rebbeinu Shalom exists, that it's Torah min Hashemayim and it's obligatory, and that the centrality of the Jewish people. If the whole nation accepts all these things faithfully and lives by it, then we have a large nation which reflects the advantages of a Hasidic community. If you have such a nation, then people cannot go doing Avodah Zarah, they can't do Chilul Shabbos, they can't do it because they don't belong to this community. Go move to Egypt. This community, or Egypt or whatever, Greece or whatever, France, but this community, this supranational community is organized around the ideology of basic Judaism, the basic norms of Judaism, and you have to stick to it. What are you going to do privately in your house? Hopefully you won't do any bad things, but that's not what we're talking about. People are people, I understand that. But in the public sphere, there is no violation of the Torah. There's no kfirah. There's no avodah zarah. People don't do averas. In the time of, that was the work of the Tkufas HaShoftim, to create such a society. And then when the Melech comes in, then he could be that spiritual leader who bring people to the highest levels and come to the fulfillment of the Bria, to the Bias HaMashiach. That is the job of the Melech. But in order for him to do that, the community has to be self-sustaining, self-organized, not involved with that. And you see, certain times, in the Tkufas HaShoftim, it was that they had 80 years or 40 years where it really was like that. There was one case in Tanakh, Plegesh Begiva, where there was in Binyamin, that there was a rape and murder of a Plegesh, of a concubine, and all the Shvatim were enraged, And they went to war with Binyamin. How could you have such a thing? In the public sphere, this was an open thing. It wasn't done secretly somewhere. It was public. And this cannot be. It cannot be. They didn't say, okay, we'll take... They went to war. This is not what happens in this society. So that was what they were attempting to do. And they were able to do it for stretches. But it was not stable. It did not reach the point where it was solid. There was a stretch of a few decades, and then, because of the Canaanim who were still living there, then people started fraternizing with them, and they started going to their temples, and then, who knows, and it was crumbling, and the whole organizing principle of the society was being undermined. And then, not only was the Torah being violated, but the unity of the nation, the solidarity of the nation was also undermined. Because, so what are we? I mean, there's some people doing this, some people doing that, some people are going to Avodah Zarah, and some people are sitting and learning. So we're not a united nation. We're just like, and that made them vulnerable to attack from the neighbors. That was going on to Tkufas HaShoftim. And then a Shofet used to come along and used to go around and gave shmuzin and drushes and speeches, and he inspired the people, and they were chayzer b'tshuva, and they abandoned all these aberrations that they were doing, and they all were back on the same page, and they were all together, organized around the basic Jewish ideology, and then they were strong, and they were able to expel the invaders. That's what was going on during the Tkufas HaShoftim. They were trying to prepare the ground for the introduction of a Jewish king, what he was supposed to do, not an executive, not the chief executive, not a president, is to bring a person who would be the spiritual leader, who would bring them to the highest levels, but then everything has to be set. And it was not stable. So that's why it went on for 100 years, 200 years, 400 years it went on. It didn't happen. At the end of the 400 years, the Zkenim came to Shmuel. They said, listen, we've got big problems with Plishtim and with the Amonim, big problems. We need a king who's going to come in here and be the chief executive, be the political king, just like all the Goyim have that type of a king. We need such a king, and he's going to come in and he's going to organize the country. He's going to, tax everybody and establish a standing army. And this is something that we need. And Shmuel was upset because says basically what you need is to be organized by your devotion to the Rebbeinu Shalom. But you weren't. You just fragmented. The whole country's fragmented. So what do you need? Somebody to come in and pull all the fragments together? Why are you fragmented? You shouldn't be fragmented. Hashem Malkam. God is your king, and by your loyalty to him, you wouldn't be fragmented, but you are, and you need a king. So the Rebbeinu Shalom told them, give them a king, but give them Shaul. Shaul was not from Yehuda, and this king was supposed to be from Yehuda. Well, he also Shevet from Yehuda, so he gave them Shaul. His job would be to organize the country, pull all the fragments together, stabilize the country, let it be a stable society, again, organized around the ideology of basic Judaism. Okay, maybe some people have different shittas, different flavors, but all organized around the ideology of basic Judaism. And then he'll do this for a while, and then we'll bring in a king from Shevet Yehuda. So this was Shaul. And Shaul was a great person. He was like Shechma Mala, head and shoulders above everybody else. But he failed. He failed when he was tested. I'm not going to review this again. This is in the previous episode. But when he was tested 2 times by Shmuel, he did not follow what he was supposed to do. He didn't listen to the prophet, and therefore his his kingship was supposed to come to an end. So Shmuel went and secretly he anointed David. That David should be the king. Okay, now what happens now he didn't tell Shaul. So then the relationship between Shaul and David was quite complicated because he used to have, after this happened, that he lost his kingship, he would not be able to pass it on to his children. So he had a ruach ra, that means he went into bouts of melancholia. Now, I don't know if this, you look in different Mefarshim, was this just a natural depression that because of a situation, or was this something supernatural that God put on him, that he had this ruach ra? But however he got it, he fell into these bouts of melancholia, and he needed somebody to cheer him up. And he asked for a harp player, that somebody should come and play the harp for him. And David came, they got David, and David came, and he played the harp for him, and it made him happy. And he used to, anytime he got sad, David used to play the harp. And he liked David very much, and he made his arms bare. He gave him a high position in the palace. David was a phenomenal person. He was very talented. He was tremendously devoted to the Rabbeinu Shalom. His love for the Rabbeinu Shalom was incredible. And he really was well equipped to be this king that the Torah wanted. And now he was held in abeyance until Shaul ended. But in the meantime, he was in Shaul's palace. Shaul gave him his daughter. Then they had a war with Plishtim. And what they used to do sometimes in those days, they used to have the two encampments. You would meet and get ready to fight on the battlefield. One maybe on one mountain, one hillside. Then on the other hillside, they go down into the valley and they go stick swords into each other and kill each other until you see who could kill the most and who would win. And sometimes what they did is they had a conflict of champions. That instead of all of us going down there and fighting, and and so many people dying and everything, and we're going to resolve this battle by one against one. You put forward a champion, and you put forward a champion, and let them fight each other. So the Plishtim had a champion, his name was Goliath. Goliath was a giant. I don't know how tall he was. Was he 7 feet? Was he 8 feet? Was he, I don't know, the Rambam says the tallest a person can be. The Rambam the Meira says it's 9 feet. 6 amos is the highest, the tallest that a person could be. So maybe he was 9 feet tall. He was a giant. He was a big man. And he had armor and a sword. And David asked that he wants to go fight. So he let him go. And David had a slingshot. And with one stone, he struck him in the head and he killed him. And that way, they won the battle. As time went on and they had more battles, David was very successful on the battlefield. He was a great warrior. And eventually people began to say, well, Shaul killed 1,000, he killed 10,000, that he was outshining the king. And Shaul didn't sit well with him. And he tried to, sometimes when he was in his bouts of melancholia, he tried to kill him. He would throw a spear at him, he tried to kill him, and he was not successful. This anointment of David as the king was in secret. When Shmuel died, then his Talmidim revealed to the country that this is what he had done, and he is the anointed king. This created a lot of tension with Shaul, and this went on for a while. That he was running, and Shaul was pursuing him, and he was getting away. He had opportunities to kill Shaul. He did. There was one time when he was sitting in a cave, he was hiding in a cave, and Shaul came in, and he sat there, and David sneaked up, and he cut off the edge of his garment. And that's it. He wanted to show him that if I wanted to kill you, I could, but I'm not going to kill you. And David and Yonasan, Shaul's son, were the best of friends. If you want to give an example of the closest best friends, David and Yonasan. And even though Yonasan knew that he's going to lose he's not going to succeed his father, but they were very close friends, and he was always loyal to him, and he warned him when he thought that he would be in a dangerous place. And this went on. Eventually, David had to run away. He had to leave the country. He ran to Plishtim, and he represented himself as a renegade. That he wasn't really, he was really a renegade. He convinced Achish of Gas that he was a renegade. And they gave him a city, Tziklog. You could be there. He had like 600 men with him. You could stay there. They brought their families, and they stayed in Tziklog. Then there was a big battle brewing with Yisrael, with Shaul, and David wanted to go. He told Achish, I want to go to the battle, because supposedly on the side of Plishtim, but really he wanted to go to the battle to be able to help his people as much as he could. And Achish said, okay, good, you're my man, you can go. But the generals said, no, we're back here to the diarchy, that Plishtim was ruled by a king and by the generals. Achish was the king. He gave David asylum. He gave him a place to stay. Everything is fine. But you're going to send him into the battle. The generals, you have no authority there. We have the authority, and you may not. So David did not go, and there was a battle, and Shaul was killed. And then David came back to Israel. He established his kingdom in Hebron. Shaul had a son. Shaul and Yonasan were both killed in that battle. And afterwards, Shaul had a son, Ishbosheth, who claimed the crown for himself. So there was a lot of civil war until that was resolved. But like for 7 years, he was in Hebron, and then eventually he became king in Yerushalayim. After he became king, he established an alliance with King Hiram of Tsur, of Tyre and Phoenicia, and he used to send him cedars to build his palace. David did not build the Beis HaMikdash. We'll talk about that next time. He built himself a big palace, and a royal palace, and he sent him cedars for it. He sent him workmen to help him do it, and then David, when he became king, was able to conduct wars with all the nations around him, and he was able to conquer them. He conquered the Moav and Aram. He conquered Damascus. He conquered Edom. He conquered Ammon. David's kingdom was very large. It was very large. It reached all the way up into Syria and across the Jordan, and it was like probably the largest that it had ever been. David, as I was saying before, was also the ideal of a Jewish king. The ideal. He was in Torah. He was in the Messiah of Torah from Moshe all the way down to us. David was one of the Baalei Messiah. The Torah went through him. He taught Torah. He accepted Torah from the earlier generations, and he taught it to Klal Yisrael. He was a tremendous tzaddik. He wrote Tehillim, which you read Tehillim, and Tehillim is everybody reads Tehillim, and you see the passion and the love and the tzidkus of David. It was phenomenal. And ideally, he would have come after society had been stabilized in what they were trying to do during the period of the Shoftim. If that had been successful, if we didn't have a king who was dealing with collected fragments, if the whole society had come together to one organic whole, organized around Judaism, around the basic tenets of Yiddishkeit, if that had been done, then if David had come in, he could have been Mashiach. He could have brought Klal Yisrael to the highest levels and brought about the end, the Geula, and all the things that happened afterwards would not have been necessary. But he did not. When he came in, the society was still fragmented. There were still people doing all kinds of things. and he had to. He did the best he could, and he's like a shining light for all generations from that time. The David's light shines till today. David. We talk about Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and we talk about David. David was way up there as one of the greatest Jews that ever lived. There are a couple of episodes in Tanakh where he made a misstep, and he did tshuva, and he writes about it, and some say that he did the misstep to show that he could do tshuva, but it's very possible that if the whole society had been properly organized, if it had been a pure society, completely loyal to the Rebbeinu Shalom and to his Torah, then David would not have sinned. But whatever he did, the Gemara says that whoever says David sinned, Eina Elatoya, it's a mistake. The Gemara speaks about that, but it still was something. It was a misstep, and he needed to do tshuva for it. And until him, he writes about how horrible he felt about that misstep, but he came in prematurely. He came when the society was not ready for a Jewish king. And that's why everything happened. So for a few generations, as we were talking before, the Hasidic Rebbes, that the successors were good, until eventually they were not. Thank you very much. I'd like to invite you to visit me at RabbiReinman.com and explore all my works, both completed and still in progress, and kindly take the opportunity to lend your support on the participant page. Thank you very much, and be well.